Welcome back. Today's story filled with drama and unexpected turns. Hit like, subscribe, and let's jump in.
My father used to tell me, don't let them know you're coming for them, just take Highway 1, be direct, and annihilate them. He was a guy of few, if any, words. Maybe I'd forgotten about it lately, but it was on its way. I sat thinking over the events of the last several weeks, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find anything particular that led me to believe she was cheating on me. The emotion that filled my being was the consequence of many little things combined together, leaving me with a sense of discomfort more than anything else. There was something going on, but I couldn't pinpoint it. I was very positive that something was going on, but I had no evidence, no clue who, what, or where it was occurring, supposing it was. I'd even begun to doubt my own sanity. Was I creating too much of something? Overreacting? Perhaps she was contemplating several situations in which she would cheat, but with whom? I had no notion, and my stomach was in knots. I sensed rather than comprehended what was going on. Perhaps it was the start of a fling or affair, or it might have been a one-time occurrence. The more I tormented myself with ideas and imaginations, the more confident I grew. Strangely, I'd been thinking like this for what felt like weeks, but how long had whatever been going on before I realized anything was wrong? I took another swig of my whiskey, the ice rattled in the glass, signaling that it was time for a refill. I caught the bartender's gaze, and he nodded. He slipped over the bar and refilled my drink with another double whiskey on the rocks. He offered me a half-smile, as if he could read my thoughts. He had seen the same sight many times before. His expression was one of support and sorrow at the same time, as he knew the pained look behind my eyes. The delicious flavor of whiskey warmed the back of my tongue and throat as I took another sip. I vowed to take it easy as I glanced around the bar at the few other drinkers. It was silent, with nonsensical phrases filling the room and contributing to my rising feeling of despair. There was no pleasure here. The faces of the people that crowded the pub were all dull and unimpressive, no one stood out, everyone was plain and typical in every manner. The sole lady in the establishment, perhaps in her late 30s, somewhat overdressed for the time of day and maybe seeming desperate, was being given beverages by an older male. He seemed to be hoping for a fortunate break, and looking at her, he didn't need to strive too hard. I assumed she already had his number. Other souls seemed to be passing the time while the rain poured outside, dampening spirits even more. Soon, they'd run out of excuses to remain at the pub and return home. I was still unsure on what to do. So, what is the story? I looked towards the speaker. She gazed at me with eyes that bored deep into my soul. It was as if I opened my lips to speak, but no words emerged. She stood in the dimly lit pub, water streaming from her as she began to remove her coat. What are you doing here, Emily? I was concerned about you. I expected to find you here, so here I am. Do you want to talk? I gazed at her, trying to recover my composure. Are you worried about me? Why? What do you mean? I gazed at her, trying to figure out what she was thinking, frightened that she was attempting to catch me off guard in some manner. Could I trust her? I drank my whiskey and ordered her a vodka and tonic, which was brought with elegance by the bartender, who smiled as he saw Emily. She caught his eye as he served her, giving one of her lovely, butter-wouldn't-melt grins as his gaze swept up her cleavage. Emily waited until the bartender had gone away before saying anything again, her eyes watchful as we exchanged glances, both apprehensive and striving for position and advantage. Well, it's everything to do with how you've been behaving lately. You seem to be carrying the weight of the world's troubles. You want to tell me what the heck is going on? I looked into her brown eyes for a time before moving away. I always enjoyed how she could read me like a book. We got along and appeared to understand each other. We had disagreements, but we never fell out over them. We were always open and honest with one another. Well, to a point. What was left unsaid was simply understood. I'm all right, Emily. We are okay. There is nothing to be concerned about, truly. I glanced at her as she absorbed my words. I could see she wasn't buying it. My heart fell. I'd attempted to pass it off, but I knew it wasn't going to work. Emily took a cautious sip of her drink and peered deep into my soul once again. Jesus, here it comes, I mused. She set the glass on the table in front of her, then linked her fingers together and leaned slightly forward toward me. I know what is going on. I attempted to bluff, I don't know what you mean. For heaven's sake, John, I understand. So let's be honest with each other and quit pissing about. The bartender heard the last few lines, twisting his head slightly to capture more of what he assumed would be something tasty. Let's sit in one of the booths, this is too public for my liking. I saw the bartender's disappointed expression as we rose and moved across the bar into one of the side booths. We sat opposite one another, like prize-fighters, waiting for the other to swing. "Okay, what do you think you know?" I jousted. "Nice try, John. You understand that you cannot lie to me. We've known each other far too long." "I understand, so tell me about it. You know you need to speak to someone, so do it." I'd known Emily since she was 19. She was often around and had a crush on me when I first began dating her sister, Sarah, who was 3 years older. We started dating when we were both 22. Emily and I had always gotten along, which annoyed her elder sister. They were as different as chalk and cheese in many respects, but their fury was shared, as seen by several sibling squabbles over the years. After 2 years, we married and began what I believed would be an ideal future. We were both working good jobs and earning enough to live comfortably. Emily, my sister-in-law, had been having a good time in her late teens and early 20s, but at the age of 28, she was seeking for something more mature. I thought she'd sowed her wild oats and developed into someone who any man would be blessed to be close to. Sarah and I had been married for 8 years. In another month, we would celebrate our 5th anniversary. That is if we go that far. Emily was a very beautiful lady to me, and I considered her both a friend and a sister-in-law. I gazed at her as my eyes filled with tears as I struggled for words to express how I felt, but her words echoed loudly in my thoughts. She stretched across the table, massaging my fingers before securely clutching them, a message of comfort and more to me as my heart began to crack. "Okay, John, if you want say it, I will. Sarah is cheating on you. I believe you are aware of this, as I am. So what are you going to do about it?" My eyes opened as I heard the words, but I still couldn't understand as I firmly attempted to figure out what I understood and what it meant. I didn't want to hear anything more. In my perspective, if I didn't actually know, it couldn't be occurring and thus couldn't affect me. I would also not have to deal with it. Emily stared at me and saw the glassy-eyed expression I gave her. Was it shock or denial? "John, I adore you, but for heaven's sake, wake up. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding or something." I attempted to avoid her and deceive myself even more. Emily's eyes blazed with wrath, and she smacked me across the face. The bartender glanced over and paused while cleaning the glass in his palm. "Is everything well there?" I raised my hand. "Yes, sure, no problem here." I placed my palm on my face, the heat from the painful slap making it shine. I was convinced Emily's hand was imprinted perfectly there as well. "I'm sorry, John, but you irritate me sometimes. You know how much I care about you. I can't stand to watch you being wounded like this, so grow up and man up. This is occurring, and we must take action." I swallowed as I wiped my face. The gravity of my predicament was dawning on me as the pain of her smack penetrated my mind. "Okay, they'll start. I'm sure you have some suspicions, but here goes anyhow. I was with her a few weeks back when she received a call on her cell phone. She exited the room to take it, which seemed weird. We are sisters, for goodness sake. What is she hiding from me?" I nodded, expecting the worst, but as I drank my whiskey, she continued. "I simply thought that was strange, so when I had a moment, I checked her phone. Trusting, there is no lock code. The call came from a contact she had, identified as Robert. I wasn't aware of any Robert or Bob, but I thought I'd keep an eye out for any repetition. So, who was this Robert or Bob guy?" I inquired, racking my head for any information about the name. "I found out who he is after about a week. He is a man she knew years ago, before she began dating you. Anyway, it seems that he communicated via one of those social media or chat sites. It seems that they had also been texting for a few weeks, but I was unaware of this. All I knew was that there were little things that appeared to keep you apart in some way. I understand, but that was all part of what they were doing. Nothing blatant, but it looked like everything was falling into place for them. So it's simply a couple of buddies contacting each other, reliving old memories or something." "Yes, seems like that was how it started anyway. Do you imply that anything happened?" "Happened? Yes. Are you saying you haven't observed anything suspicious?" "Only that it seemed like circumstances were conspiring to keep us apart, and of course, the obvious lack of opportunity for any fun too." Emily gave me an incredulous expression, like if I were foolish or something. "What?" I glanced back at her. "John, I love you dearly, but for heaven's sake, get your head out of your ass." The truth was seeping further into my bewildered brain, and her words made it more real by the minute. This was serious, I thought. I took another drink, bracing myself. "Do you have any idea how far it has progressed?" Emily gazed at me, then looked aside for a single second. That was all the answers I needed. When? How? Where? I questioned quickly, my head playing catch-up as I felt my fury rising within. The struggle between rationality, common sense, and sheer primal wrath had begun. I know she has seen him at least 3 times in the last 2 weeks. I wasn't sure at first, and it wasn't until 2 days ago that I realized it had moved forward. I had lunch with one of my pals who works with Sarah, and she revealed something. I didn't mention anything at the time, and she handled it nicely, so I let it go. She met him twice for lunch and at least once for supper last month. Is it consistent with what you've noticed? I glanced at her as I absorbed her words. I recently contacted her workplace to schedule a midday meeting. She was either not there or had just left. Was that when she met him? Last week, she had a lecture that she had to attend. It was a last-minute activity scheduled for after work. She had arrived home late that night, about 10. Thinking back, she had come in complaining that it had taken too long, and the crew had gone for a drink in the hotel bar to decompress before departing. I recall there was no sex that night, and she also took a shower before going to bed. My thoughts was racing, and my brain scrambled as I processed these painful truths, each one adding to the misery and twisting the dagger that was firmly lodged in my heart. "Screw this," I said. Emily stared at me, her eyes filled with anxiety. "John, what are you planning to do?" "Don't do anything dumb, it's not worth getting in problems with the law." I glanced at her, and I could tell by the expression on her face that she had noticed the shift. My face felt like stone, and my heart was like a granite block. My body was prepared for what was to come, and she noticed it. "Screw it. I will not put up with this in any manner, it will end. I'll stop it. There is no place in my life for cheaters. She will pay, he will pay as well." My eyes glazed over as the rage within me, my muscles strained, my fists tightened. I was never a violent person. I had my fair share of conflicts when I was younger, but I never sought out problems. Just occasionally, you have to stand up and confront reality, which is what I did then. I was a bit out of practice, but that would be addressed quickly. "John, whatever you have in mind, take a step back. Think about it. Don't rush in without a strategy, otherwise everything will go to hell. You must think and prepare or you will be burnt." Her words cut through my wrath, pouring into the rational portion of my mind and making strange sense. It helped me relax a little and realize that what I had suspected was accurate, therefore I wasn't going insane after all. "Do you think that's where she is now?" I glanced across at Emily. I could see her eyes had filled, and a single tear had begun to fall down her gorgeous face. "Yes, I know she is with him now, that's why I came looking for you." I felt my fury rise again, and my fist banged the table. Several folks in the bar turned to look. When I lifted my hand to the bartender, he offered me another half-smile. How the hell did he know? "Do you know where?" I inquired, more with hope than anything else. "No, I don't know, but I'll meet my girlfriend again tomorrow and see what I can find out. I know he's married with children, but I'm not sure where he lives." If it helps, I grabbed for her hand, gripping it hard as I wiped a tear from her face. "Thank you, Emily. I realize this is difficult for you, but I truly do appreciate it." "What are you going to do?" She glanced at me worriedly. "I know I can't accomplish all I want to, at least not now, but I'm going to end this. And when I do, it will be definitive, and there will be consequences. There is no regret, but they will both pay. In the meanwhile, I'll safeguard what's mine and gather the proof I need for whatever I decide to do next." Emily looked frightened at me as I finished my whiskey. I attracted the bartender's attention, and he poured another for each of us as he shuffled over. I could see Emily was about to say something, so I put my hand up to stop her until the beverages were brought. I handed him a letter. "Keep the change." He nodded and walked away. "So, how long till you approach her?" "I've got a lot to think about. I'll make a few of calls tomorrow. I need to safeguard my assets, and I'll make sure she doesn't collect any money from me. Not a penny. You understand how tough it will be to be around her, don't you?" "Yes, I understand, but it has been like this for the previous several weeks regardless. I'm betting if she hasn't noticed yet, she won't see any difference." Emily swallowed her drink and stood up. "I've got to go, John. Can we speak again tomorrow? I'll see what I can do for you." She pulled her coat back on. I arose and assisted her, feeling her near to me. Damn, she looked just like her sister. She glanced up at me, and I could see tears in her eyes as I kissed her cheek. "Go home, it'll be okay. I'll call you tomorrow." She grinned and turned away. I watched her go through the door and into the dark, damp darkness. I sighed deeply as I sat down, unsure what to do next. One thing was certain: they would pay, and it would be rapid, unwavering, and ruthless. I don't remember anything after that. I awoke in my own bed with a mouth that resembled the bottom of a parrot cage. My head was still floating when I lifted it from the bed. When I rolled over, I realized I was alone and there was no trace of Sarah. My senses began to awaken as I heard sounds from below. I attempted to stand by sliding my feet over the bed's edge. Oh my goodness, what did I do to myself last night, I thought. I stumbled to the restroom and began to recover from the effects of my whiskey cloud. I trudged downstairs in a cloud of anguish, my joints ached and everything seemed to hurt. I spotted her as I stepped into the kitchen. Hello, love. What did you do last night to get into that state? Wouldn't you want to know? I had a drink with an old friend, that was it. I got carried away. I sat down, poured orange juice, gulped it, and went for another. Oh, really? Who was that? Anyone I know? My thoughts shifted into gear. No, I do not think so. It was Bob. I've known him for a long time. I haven't seen him in years, and he's in town for a few days on business. Bob. As she turned, there was a flash of something in her face. Yes, I'm sure you remember him. Thinking back, we were in college together and played football for a few years. Tall man with brown hair. He inquired about you nevertheless. Sarah seemed perplexed. Sorry, I don't remember a Bob. As long as you had fun. Strike one. She sat across from me at the table. I gazed at her as I recalled my conversation with Emily last night. So, honey, what were you up to last night? Anything exciting? What time did you come in? She lied to me, looking me in the eye, saying, oh, nothing much. I finished up at work, and a few of us headed out for a quick lunch and a drink. I got in by 9:33. I was growing concerned about you until I recalled you had a late meeting. I knew she wasn't home since I was still there at 10 p.m. I'd had enough and headed to the pub. Strike two. I have a few things to accomplish this morning, so we'll shower and go. I could be late this evening, so don't wait up. Bob said he'd get in contact, we still need to catch up. If he's visiting for a few days, you'll need to ask him over. It's good to meet up with old pals. Sure, he'll do that. You must remember him, love. She stared at me blankly, trying not to react or reveal anything, but she felt something. Perhaps it will return to me later, love. Get going now, or you'll be late. Would you want me to drive you? You had a few last night. No, that's okay. As I remember, you'll need to take a taxi to go to my vehicle. I left it in the bar, so thank you. I went to get dressed. After more orange juice and a couple more pills, I left the home 33 minutes later, just as Sarah was getting dressed. I had a full day planned. One thing was certain: this would not last long. I clenched my teeth as I imagined Sarah with this Bob figure. My fists balled up. He was about to pay. I was going to squash that worm. Work was crazy. I received call after call to deal with concerns on the line. My secretary handled some, but I needed to attend meetings, so I couldn't miss any of them. By mid-morning, the initial rush had subsided, and I had nearly free time to address my personal matters. I closed my office door and began to review my finances. Within 15 minutes, I'd tightened the purse ties and placed some money out of reach. I also scheduled an appointment with a solicitor to discuss a potential divorce. I still had a few days until then, so I figured it would give me time to get additional information. Not that it would matter much, but it may provide me with some leverage. Sarah already had her own bank account and credit card, so there was no need to do anything there. Access to our joint account was an issue, but I swiftly closed that loophole so she couldn't collect any more than what was left. My personal account was protected and only had a tiny amount, the remainder was transferred out and kept securely. We didn't have any children, so if it came to that, we'd just break up. I'd resolved in my mind that we could only get through this if Sarah confessed her crimes and sought forgiveness. Any hint of hesitation there, and we were done. That notion made me sad. I sat at my desk in quiet, reflecting on what had happened and the steps I had made so far today. I needed more information on the Bob figure and proof, or would just knowing about it be enough to screw the two of them over? The phone rung, interrupting my thoughts. Yes, it's me. How are you, Emily, John? Oh, you know, I'm busy with things, ideas, goals, and everything else. I'm not sure why, but I've begun shifting stuff. My girlfriend told me more about this person, and his name is Bob Turner. He is married, I know his address and where he works. I got it without letting anybody know what was going on. My buddy knows Sarah and just saw her with him. According to her, they are becoming pretty hot with each other, despite their best efforts to disguise it, the signals are there. She asks, has she seen them together? Yes, they went to the Silver Fox Grill restaurant the other night after the session. They lingered after everyone else had departed. She stated they appeared comfortable with each other. Well, at least that's a beginning. I'm sure they have CCTV if necessary. Anyway, send me his contact information, I need to go forward with this. It's chewing me up inside. Emily handed on his information. Within a few minutes, I had discovered his social media presence and captured a snapshot of him. That was when I thought I recognized his face. It seemed familiar, but where and when had I seen that face before? I glanced at the clock, it was nearly midday, so I decided to phone Sarah and see if we could meet up or simply stir the pot. My heart felt cold as I placed the call, and the knot in my gut seemed to increase, ready to explode, when I heard her response. Hi, honey. Hi, John, she responded, knowing my phone number. Hello, babe. What are your plans for lunch? I thought we could meet up if you're free. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I have a 33-minute meeting planned for the afternoon. I was going to get something fast from the deli next door. That is all right. What is the meeting about? Anything exciting? It's the same old procedure with a new customer. I believe it's Mr. Turner. Her comments went through me like a dagger, and she was nearly rubbing it in my face by revealing who it was. I held my breath for a few seconds while I attempted to remain composed. Are you there, honey? Her voice faded over the earphone. Yes, I am here. You strike three. You and Mr. Turner will get yours shortly, with no respite or compassion. Total scorched earth. Yes, sweetie, I'm here. Sorry, I got sidetracked by something I just remembered. Look, I have to go, and I know you have to get ready for your meeting, so have fun and I will see you later, okay? Bye, I love you. Bye. I put the phone down, furious. My secretary poked her head around the door as I sat there clenching my teeth. Steve, I'm going to the deli down the block, do you want me to bring you anything? I pondered for a minute. Yes, bring me whatever. Surprise me, as long as it's large, robust, and has enough of red meat. I am in the mood for something to sink my teeth into. She glanced at me oddly and nodded as she shut the door. She believed her boss was behaving suspiciously. He had been closed all morning, businesslike, certainly, but there was something more going on, she knew it. Emily called into her sister's workplace. As she walked into the foyer, she saw her sister get out of the elevator and head towards the front door with a tall dark-haired guy. He seemed to be about 33, so a few of years older. She recognized him after viewing his picture online, Bob Turner. She stood in front of her sister, who jumped in surprise at seeing her. Emily, what are you doing here? Emily gazed at her sister, sensing her distress at her evident intentions being disrupted. I just thought I'd stop by to see my sister and maybe go for lunch, she said innocently. Well, me and Mr. Turner here are having a business lunch, so maybe another time. He extended his hand. Bob Turner, nice to meet you. Glad to meet you, Mr. Turner. Have you known Sarah for long? He appeared perplexed by her inquiry. Sarah began to pull him away. Look, Emily, we need to leave, we have a meeting. Catch up soon. Emily smiled as she saw the pair go out the door and into a waiting taxi. She saw her sister glancing back at her as it drew away. I sat in my office, munching my way through a large sub. It was full of red meat, and I grinned to myself as I nodded slowly, enjoying it while planning my next actions. Emily verified that Sarah had left her office, so I contacted her secretary and discovered that she was gone all day. Well, isn't it great, my finances were in order. The locksmith was on speed dial and had already agreed on the requirements. My solicitor was ready to fire as soon as I handed him the last information he had requested. Okay, tonight was supposed to be the first step. I was going to play with the two of them for a bit before pulling the trigger. My father constantly advised me, don't let them know you are coming for them, just take Highway 67, be direct, and annihilate them. He was a guy of few, if not direct, words. Maybe I'd forgotten about it lately, but it was on its way. Sarah stepped in the door that evening, and I was home. She looked good, nothing out of place, and she smelled normal, until I attempted to kiss her. It was unmistakable, a man's fragrance, faint but yet there. She saw me looking at her. I said nothing, kissed her on the cheek, and went to the door. Where are you going? Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. I just have an issue to deal with. Just stopping by Jerry's. He asked me over to play poker with a handful of coworkers. I figured it would benefit me. Will not be too late with it. I closed the door behind me while clenching my teeth. I got into my vehicle and slid down the driveway. I went to Jerry's and pulled up outside his house. He led me through the entrance into his garage. Jerry and I have a long history. He has always sailed close to the wind and had prior difficulties with the authorities, but given his unique style of fighting training, he was the perfect companion for what I was looking for. You don't mess around with a cage fighter. Jerry was a large man, 63 and 200 pounds, all muscle. Believe me, he is not the kind of man you want to mess with. He had a temper to match his bulk, but we had been close friends since school. I had contacted Jerry earlier, and he had offered his assistance in whatever manner I needed, no questions asked, that kind of support. We swiftly snuck into the garage, where I changed into a pair of black overalls and a matching ski mask. We appeared like two mimes as we stood staring at each other. No words were said as we entered a generic second-hand automobile that he had obtained. There was nothing extraordinary or noteworthy about it as I drove slowly across town to the location Emily had given me. Still, no words passed between us. We had already agreed on the format, so there was no need to say anything further. Jerry brought the automobile to a halt outside Bob Turner's house. There was no indication of life that we could see. We waited in quiet as the front door opened and he stepped out. He got in his vehicle and drove slowly down the road. Jerry followed from a safe distance. We knew exactly where he was heading, so there was no hurry or worry. Parking at the driving range was no trouble. We remained in the vehicle while Bob Turner went for his usual 50-ball bucket. It seems that he did this every week. It's amazing what you can discover online if you know where to search. We sat back, the radio was on, and Kenny Rogers was whimpering silently. Jerry gazed at me as the words came over the radio, then reached out and switched it off. We sat watching and waiting, and the strain inside me was nearly intolerable. It was tough to remain motionless and not get up and go about, but that was perilous. The car lot began to dwindle until just a few vehicles remained. We both tensed as we watched him go to his vehicle. Jerry exited and moved silently towards the objective. Bob Turner was still remembering his last shot of practice as he removed the lid of his boot and placed his clubs inside. Jerry lifted and pushed him into the boot, along with his clubs. A well-placed punch to the jaw was all it needed to quiet him. Jerry, the cage fighter, took over, and Bob Turner suffered excruciating agony for the next 33 seconds in the boot of his own vehicle. Jerry, satisfied that he had utilized the human punch bag enough, turned his focus to Mr. Turner's crotch. Jerry squealed before passing out after many fist bumps. He slammed the lid closed and swiftly returned to the vehicle, where I drove us out of the parking lot silently and without fuss. That went very well, Jerry said as he removed his gloves and mask. Thanks, Jerry, I really appreciate that. Don't worry, friend, anytime. I still owe you and will never be able to repay you for what you have done for me. Well, that is what friends are for. At least your hands aren't broken, and there was no CCTV in the parking lot, so job done, as they say. Let's go back and start the card game, the others will be there by now. We drove back and spent the next 4 hours playing poker for pleasure, with no huge stakes. We were friends, and friends do not cheat one another. The mood was positive, the boys were all aware of what was going on and were completely behind me. That alone made me feel better. I knew I had to handle some business with Sarah shortly, but first I was going to play with her brain. I staggered in the door just after 1 a.m. I overstated how much I had to drink. Jerry had arranged for one of the men to drop off my automobile. Sarah was awake, waiting. I believed it was time for an Oscar-winning performance. Honey, why are you awake? I warned you I would be a bit late. Are you okay? She took a careful look at me. John and the lads have just left me off in my vehicle. I believe I hit the liquor a bit too hard again. I hurled my jacket at the coat hooks and failed miserably, sinking onto the couch. I gazed at her. Sarah sat with her arms crossed and an expression of contempt on her face. I gazed at her, goggle-eyed and expressionless. What, she simply tooted. She was eager to say something. Come on, out with it. What's going on, John? Is there anybody else or something? You've been behaving odd recently. I laughed. I could feel my rage building and seething within me. I gulped it back down. All in good time. John, I am your pedal. I've been having a difficult time lately. It'll be over soon. Sarah stared at me, thinking about what I'd said. I could see it, she wasn't certain, but there was clearly something. We went up to bed. I collapsed and promptly fell asleep. That irritated her. She was ready for a full-on argument, but I wasn't playing. Sarah was the first to get up the following morning and started preparing coffee. I rumbled down the stairs, being unpleasant and hungover. I bounced into the kitchen. Morning, lover. How are you? Oh my, I've got a head on me again. Do you have anything I can take for it? She threw some headache medication at me. As I drank my coffee, she seemed to be silent. I saw her phone on the kitchen table and wondered whether she had been contacted by anybody. Sarah saw me glancing at her phone. I could see she wanted to grab for it, but that would have sounded strange. I poured some more orange juice and nonchalantly grabbed it. I saw a look of terror on her face. So she had received a message somehow. I took a short glance at it before passing it over to her. It needs charging, sweetheart. I don't want a dead battery to prevent any communications from getting through. I left the kitchen and went to get ready. Sarah gazed after me as if she understood what was going on. Bob hadn't contacted her this morning, as he had done in the previous several weeks. Couldn't he know? She rejected the concept. No chance, she had been so cautious. It had only been going for a few weeks. It included a couple lunches, 3 dinners, and, of course, 3 stays at the hotel. She assumed it was nothing more than harmless fun, and John would never find out. That made her wonder when was the last time she had sex with her husband. Oh my, she couldn't recall. Perhaps that was it, she needed to act quickly. She had been so focused on Bob that she had overlooked what was in front of her. The one thing that would undoubtedly raise John's suspicion. I ran down the stairs and almost flew out the door as Sarah attempted in vain to grasp me for a deeper kiss than usual. I wasn't having any of it. I waved and smiled as I drove out of the driveway and headed to work. Around 11 a.m., I decided to send Sarah a text just for fun. Sorry about today, I have a lot on my mind, but we will soon be sorted. I love you. I sat back, waiting for anything to happen. Emily phoned in shortly after lunch and said, "What the heck happened, John?" "What are you talking about, Emily?" "One of the golfers discovered Bob Turner in the trunk of his car, battered. Employees at the club early today. Sarah informed me about it, and she is really devastated. She is quite shaken. I told her that these things sometimes happen nowadays, and it is awful when it is someone we know, but not to read too much into it." "You finished it, didn't you?" "Oh my goodness, was he seriously hurt?" "I don't really care either way, but I didn't touch him." "Well, he's only a little bruised up. I understand he has a few scratches and bruises, but nothing seems to be broken." "Have you asked her how she found out?" "Yes, she said she had a meeting scheduled with him today, and his company called to say he was in the hospital. His wife had called them." "That is extremely nice, realistic, but cute. Maybe next time it won't be that simple for them all." "What do you mean, John?" "Accidents happen in the strangest places." Sarah was not at home when I arrived that night. Her vehicle had left without a notice. I phoned her phone. "Where are you, love?" I asked cheerfully. "Oh, I am at the hospital visiting a friend, won't be long, just on my way now." "Okay, I hope she's on the mend. Anyway, I'll see you soon, love." "Love you. Bye." I turned off the phone before she could respond. She came home 30 minutes later, with a gray and worn face. "How's your friend? I hope it isn't too bad and she gets out of there soon." Sarah stared at me, as if she was about to say something but decided against it. "Oh, it's not that dramatic. She just fell and suffered severe bruises. We'll be home in a few days." "That is excellent. Coffee?" "Yes, thanks." Sarah stared at me while sipping her coffee. "One of my company's reps was assaulted the other night." She left the remark hanging, waiting for a reply. "Oh my goodness, really? What happened?" "He was beaten and left in his car overnight." "Oh, it is dreadful. I hope the cops capture whomever did this." "Is he okay?" "Yes, he is, thank goodness. Bob wasn't harmed too severely, it simply seemed like they wanted to beat him up for no reason. Nothing was stolen or taken." Strike 4. "That's the Bob you said you didn't know about." She caught me gazing at her and realized she had messed up. She attempted to hide it, but it was too late. She now knew I was aware of this as well. She hastily exited to change. I thought she'd be on the phone any second now, but who? I concluded that I needed to evaluate my strategy since things were going quicker. I wanted to speed things up a little. I summoned Sarah up the stairs and told her I wanted to go out for a short bit, but not to worry, I wouldn't be gone long. I drove to Bob Turner's home address and knocked on the door. The door opened, and a little dark-haired lady appeared in front of me. "Mrs. Turner, you do not know me, but I have something to tell you that is rather sensitive. Can I come in for a moment?" She stared at me, apprehensive and curious. Cautious. "My name is John Carter, my wife's name is Sarah Carter, and she has dealings with your husband." I paused as she wore a look of recognition and horror. She stepped back from the entrance and led me into the lounge. "I assume this has something to do with the two of them." I could see the sadness in her eyes instantly. "Yes, I'm afraid so, they've been having an affair. I found out a few days ago. I'm sorry to have to break it to you. I also understand he is now in the hospital." She seemed to crumple inward, her head sunk to her breast, and tears poured freely. For a few seconds, I knew it. I knew he was at it again, she snarled. "I'm divorcing Sarah, she's had enough opportunities to come clean, and I can't tolerate her lies any longer. I'm not sure how long it's been going on, but I'm certain she's betrayed me and that I will never forgive or forget." "Does this have anything to do with the thrashing he received the other night?" I chose what to do after looking into her begging eyes. "I'm not sure about that, I didn't touch him. This occurred so quickly for me that I am still in shock. Whoever did it is okay with me, I apologize, but that is how I feel. Could he have also been playing with someone else's wife? Nothing shocks me. Well, he can leave his sorry ass on the other side of my front door. I've got enough of this. That's why we moved back here, because he was playing around." I left her still spewing fire after giving her my locksmith and solicitor's numbers. What a disaster. I rushed in my vehicle and drove to the hospital, which was just 10 minutes away. I was able to do it faster. I strolled into the entry hall, almost smiling, as if a layer of worry had begun to lift from me. I got into the elevator and went to the 4th-floor ward, where Mr. Bob Turner was being cared for. I examined the patient board and saw him in a side room, sneaking past the unmanned nurse's station unobserved. I entered his room and gently closed the door behind me. He stared at me curiously as I entered. I approached his bed, glancing at his bandaged face, one covered, the other bloodshot, glaring at me and attempting to concentrate. Jerry did a great job, I thought as I examined him. "You don't look like you recognize me, Bob. Think a little, it'll give you time." I grinned at him as he gave me a humorous look. I sat by his bed as he looked at me through the bandages on his face. I could only see one really dark and swollen eye. It seemed like there was also an issue with his jaw. Never mind, I focused on the elevated bedclothes, retaining the weight of his nether regions. "Oh, that looks awful. Is it painful?" As I moved the emergency cord away from him and tossed it under the bed, I prodded him in the ribs. He shrieked like a little pig. "Have you considered who I may be yet, Bob? Do you want a clue?" Still the puzzled expression on the half-face. "Let me look, yeah, this may assist. Consider all the married ladies you've cheated on and the marriages you've damaged. That is a good enough beginning point." His gaze was fixed on me, and I could see he was thinking as he attempted to fit the pieces together. Another minute passed as I waited, eager to taste his anguish and perplexity. "Hey, race, another hint, Bobby boy, try this. I am married to a lady named Sarah. Any good?" I saw the light bulb moment when he recognized who I was. "There you go, got it." "Yes," I grinned like a tiger before lunch. He nodded slowly. "I'm delighted we've worked everything out, but you're probably wondering why I'm here." "Of course you are." "Well, I came to deliver a message from your wife." I stopped, waited for him to understand, and then made a guttural grunt. His throat seemed to be wounded, so he couldn't talk properly at all. "Forget it, she wanted me to tell you to screw off. Is it clear enough for you? Screw off. Don't come back, divorce is on the way. Oh, and by the way, screw you." I watched a tear fall from the only eye I could see. I began laughing, and he couldn't move. I chuckled even harder as I watched him struggle. I leant over him and looked into his one eye. "I am divorcing that wife of mine because she banged a low-life grub like you, and this is just the beginning, my buddy. You may be certain that we will meet again many times. I will wreck your life just as you have mine." I will not stop. So, start running. Oh, and just to be clear, I did not do anything to you. As he stared, I lifted my hand and drove it hard into his exposed eye. I felt something give. Never mind, another quick smack to the balls. He yelled, then went out. I rose up and left the ward, not pleased at all, but it was a start. He could lie there, knowing he had messed up and there was nothing he could do about it. Nobody saw me depart. If they had, they would have seen a huge grin on my face. I drove carefully home, dealing with the other half of my issue now that I had control over my inner wrath. Once revenge began, it was just a course of action that I would follow and enjoy. For the most part, I was saddened by the loss of my marriage, yet as much as it hurt me I knew there was no turning back after a treachery. My only solace was that the parties who had brought me sorrow would face considerably bigger consequences. I do not forgive Bob Turner. He had his card marked and we would meet again. I pulled into my driveway. Sarah's vehicle was still parked where she had left it less than 2 hours before. I touched the bonnet inadvertently as I passed it on my approach to the front door. I inserted the key into the lock. As I did so, I realized this may be the final time I did this as a married man. As I went inside, my heart immediately felt heavy. It felt as if all of my fears from the previous days had become true and weighed heavily on my shoulders. As I strolled slowly into the couch, I could hear the television mumbling in the corner. I stood at the door and stared at her. Sarah sat on the couch, her manner one of dread and apprehension, as if waiting for the axe to fall. She got a sensation that something was wrong. It was as if the game had ended but nothing had been spoken. She trembled nervously as she attempted to stay cool. I stood there watching her. When she glanced up, I could see terror in her eyes. Her lips was straining to say something, but nothing came out. I strolled into the room and passed her while making myself a drink. As I sat down, I put my glass with a huge whiskey on the rocks on the coffee table between us, my gaze fixed on her, taking in her dread and, maybe, a shred of rebellion. I didn't say anything as I grabbed for my cup and carefully sipped. The booze warmed the back of my throat as it flowed down. My eyes, unblinking, bore into hers. She was waiting. Let's wait, I thought as I took another drink. Still quiet, my face expressionless as I saw the lady I had so dearly loved gazing back at me. My heart was still filled with profound affections for her, but they were tempered by the misery she had inflicted on me without cause or explanation. Now she would be feeling my agony as well. I gazed at her, and she saw nothing in my face to make her optimistic. So much was already being conveyed between us without using any words. Sarah seemed to gather herself together and straighten up as she clearly intended to brazen it out. She had no clue what I knew, and she couldn't take the damning quiet anymore. Where were you? Her eyes revealed her anxiety as I sat immobile and mute. Speak to me, darn it. She was rattled. I took another leisurely draw from my whiskey. As I saw her becoming more anxious, I remembered how much I like a whiskey after a long day. What's wrong with you, John? She hissed, enraged by my silent treatment of her. Okay, Sarah. I'll tell you where I went if you tell me where you've gone. Deal. She gazed at me, confused and weary, as her mind began to work quicker, like two prize-fighters measuring each other up, wondering who would make the opening move and cautious of the counterattack. I told you I was at the hospital visiting a friend. What is this all about? She sat back, arms folded, pleased with her first shot. I took another leisurely draw from my whiskey. Dear, I knew you'd say it. Do you want to give it another try? She looked at my deadpan delivery, and I saw terror flicker over her eyes. She was rattled now. I was with my pal, like I said. What's wrong with you? She believed she had dodged the question and redirected it back at me. Okay, Sarah, enough with this crap. I will tell you where I went, okay? It will be simpler for you to see where we are headed with this. I have gone to visit a buddy personally. I hadn't known her for long, but what I wanted to say to her was really essential. I've never met her before, but we're like buddies now. I paid great attention to her expression. I could see she was struggling to keep it together. But when she thrust her chin out, her rebellion was obvious. I had an educational conversation with her about her husband, Bob Turner. You may have heard of him. I saw the veil start to slide. It seems that her spouse has been involved in an accident and is now in hospital. Nothing major, just some fairly terrible bruises. So, hell live, which is good, right? Sarah's cheeks reddened as she felt the net close around her as I played with her. What were you talking about with this Turner woman? Sarah inquired, knowing the answer but dreaded hearing it from me. It seems her spouse is a chronic philanderer, sex hound, cheater, or whatever you want to call him. Anyway, I discovered he was cheating on her and believed she deserved to know. "Oh my God," she exclaimed, feeling the tightening of a noose around her neck. "Are you okay, sweetie? May I get you a drink? Do you know anything about Bob Turner's affairs, my dear?" I drank my drink while she struggled to find words, her tongue wouldn't cooperate, and nothing came out. "Let me help you here." I looked into her eyes, hoping she could see my true sentiments. Now I know it all. Her eyes widened and her hand moved to her lips as the revelation struck her hard. I studied her expression as she looked back at me, filled with astonishment, bewilderment, and other emotions as she sought comfort but found none in my eyes. "I know about you and Bobby boy. I've known for a while, not long, but enough. So, if you have something to say it now before you never get the opportunity again." I drained my glass and rose to pour another. "Are you sure you want have one?" I inquired, more calmer than I felt considering the situation. She nodded. I poured us each huge drinks and sat opposite her. Sarah took a big sip and glanced at me. "It didn't mean anything, you know. It was only sex." "Was it just sex?" "Of course it was, it didn't signify anything, right? Are we forgetting the promises we both made?" I could feel my rage rising as she recalled the cheater's cliché. "But it was just sex, John. It just happened." "Oh, you silly. It just occurred. It doesn't simply happen. Two individuals decide to have sex, they plot and agree to remove their clothing and screw each other senseless. They don't strip nude and fall on one another by mistake, and the universe doesn't quake in response to their actions. So don't regard me like an idiot. You and Bobby, sweetheart, have already made me a cuckold for a few weeks, or even months. But not anymore. It was only twice, and it wasn't that great either. Yes, the thought of it was exciting, but doing it was no fun at all, as I was constantly worried you might find out. So, do you think I care whether you enjoyed it? Do you think I cared if you were afraid about being caught? Do you think I cared whether you had a climax? Newsflash, I don't care. Besides, I found out, so I hope our marriage was worthwhile. I'm terribly sorry, John. It did not signify anything. We can make it through this. I will make it up to you, and I will do everything you want." I caught myself laughing wildly, almost maniacally, as she gazed at me, the realization that this might be serious suddenly sinking in. "That was a mistake. We can get around it. I apologize, I will do whatever to make things right. I will be the best wife from now on. So put things right, turn back time, and undo what you done. Can you? You are not sorry for having sex with that grub, you are sad you were caught. Would you have quit if you had not been caught? I guess not. All of the classic clichés come so readily from a cheater's lips, as do the falsehoods you've told me and others since this started. It becomes second nature. The only one here who believes your falsehoods is you. To be honest, you are not the lady I fell in love with and married. I don't recognize you anymore, you are a cheap street hooker." She gazed at me as the words and intensity of my pain began to penetrate her cheater's facade. This was serious. "What can I do, John?" "I'll do anything." "Nothing. Unless you can create a time machine. We're done. I contacted Emily while I was away, she knows too, and she will be here in a few minutes to take you up." "But where should I go?" "You are tossing me out." I gazed at her as the shock hit in. "You may go wherever you want, you cheating whore. Even return to the hospital to visit your sweetheart. I don't care as long as you leave here. We're done." I finished my drink and slammed the glass down to signal the end of our chat. Sarah sat shocked, staring at me when there was a tap on the door. I rose and went to welcome Emily. "How did it go?" she inquired as we entered the lounge. She gazed at her sister, who was crying steadily, her shoulders trembling. "Get the heck out of here, Emily. Sorry to be harsh, but if she doesn't go, I am concerned she will have the worst experience of her life, so please hurry. Thanks for this, Emily. I'll be in touch shortly." I poured another glass while Emily hustled about preparing Sarah's belongings for the next 2 days. I heard my wife weeping as she saw her sister pack her belongings and stuff them into a few of bags. It took less than 5 minutes to remove her from my house. The longer struggle would be to remove her from my life forever and heal the grief. Retribution might assist with that. That was all I had left to look forward to, along with another hard whiskey. I looked into the flames of the bonfire I had created in the backyard. Everything Sarah had was now on fire. I wasn't going to let her back into my home for anything. Screw you. I finished the bottle and threw it into the flames. I had her served in her workplace. I wanted everyone to know she was getting a divorce. I phoned her parents and told them the truth about what their beloved daughter had done and why I was divorcing her in harsh terms. Her mother attempted to get me to rethink. I must add that it did not go well for her, and by the time I hung up on her, I might have given her a heart attack. My soon-to-be ex-wife was aware that I was done with her. She tried to meet me many times, but I turned her down each time. She never challenged her divorce. Emily subsequently informed me that Sarah had been placed in therapy and would be there for a time. Emily and I did go on a few occasions, and although we did it many times, we both knew it would never work. Bob was divorced, and his wife made sure he spent every dime he had. Sometimes I feel for the men. How does a guy feel with just one ball in the sack? He departed the nation when he got out of the hospital. I continue to attend my watering hole, and I have no plans for love in the next years. Thanks for watching. Can love endure betrayal? What are your thoughts? Share below, and remember to like and subscribe.